too strong!
Brace! Do not yield! Lightning, it's everywhere!
It's open! What's down there? Answer me, is anyone alive?
His name was Jonah ben Amittai, prophet. The prophet, in a time when Israel was barely holding together. The kingdom of Israel in the 8th century BCE, torn, spiritually bankrupt. Prophets spoke, no one listened. Warnings became background noise. Into that world, God had placed Jonah, not as a priest, not as a king, as a voice. And voices in that world carried a cost. Now understand this. Israel was small, vulnerable, a thin strip of land surrounded by empires that could erase it of a Tuesday. And the biggest, most terrifying empire on the map was Assyria. And Assyria's capital was Nineveh. Nineveh. Say the name slowly. Nin-e-ve. It wasn't a city you visited. It was a city you survived. 3 days wide, the ancient texts say. 100,000 people, maybe more. Walls so thick you could race chariots on top of them. These were not just conquerors, they were architects of suffering. First, they broke you. Then, they displayed you. Then, they made it public. This wasn't propaganda. This was their reputation. This was the brand. And God looked at Nineveh and said, "Go there. Tell them their wickedness has reached me." And Jonah understood what that meant immediately. Him, Jonah. Here's what we assume. We assume Jonah was afraid, and maybe he was. But fear wasn't the whole story. Here's the part that changes everything. Jonah knew God, not the distant abstract God of philosophy. He knew him personally. He'd heard his voice before, and he knew exactly what this mission meant. If Jonah went to Nineveh, if he delivered the warning, and if Nineveh listened, God would forgive them. And Jonah couldn't bear that. These weren't just strangers to him. These were the people who had terrorized his neighbors, who had taken his countrymen, who had built an empire on the bones of the innocent. And God wanted to spare them. No, Jonah made a decision, not because he didn't hear it, because he understood it too well. He would not go east towards Nineveh. He would go west, as far west as ships could carry him, to a port city called Joppa, and from there to Tarshish, which was more or less the edge of the known world. Running from God, running hard. He paid for his passage. The text makes sure to tell us that. He invested in this escape. He went below deck, lay down, and then he did something that made no sense. He fell asleep. A wind didn't arrive. It was thrown onto the sea. Within minutes, the ship was on the edge of breaking. The sailors were veterans, men who sailed through storms their whole lives. They were terrified. Every man called on his God, different names, different altars, different prayers, but the same desperation. And the prophet was still asleep. The ship's captain fought his way below deck through walls of water and found a sleeping man. "What are you doing asleep? Get up, call on your God. Maybe your God will care about us because ours aren't answering." There was something almost darkly poetic about that. The sailor telling the prophet to pray. But Jonah said nothing. The sailors cast lots, a way of asking the universe, who brought this on us? Who is the cause? And the sea chose him. Every eye turns, the storm howls, the ship groans. "Who are you? Where do you come from? What have you done?" And Jonah told them, "I am a Hebrew. I fear the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land. I fear the Lord, the God who made the sea." The sailors understood immediately what that meant, and they were more terrified than before. "What have you done?" "Throw me into the sea," Jonah said. "This storm is because of me." They didn't want to do it. That matters. These pagan sailors, men with no covenant, no prophet, no scripture, refused to kill him. They rowed harder instead, trying to reach shore. They could not. And finally, with a prayer on their lips, a prayer to Jonah's God, asking not to be held guilty for what they were about to do, they threw him in. The sea stopped. Not gradual, instant. The sailors stood in silence, then fell to their knees and worshipped. But that's not where the camera stays. Jonah fell into the dark, into the deep, seaweed wrapping around him, sinking. He was descending into a place from which no man returns. Jonah thought it was over. And then a shadow, bigger than the ship, moving with impossible silence. Rising. Silence. Black. Gone. Jonah was inside the fish. He was not dead, but he was nowhere. Try to feel it. The darkness complete, not just dark, no light, no reference, no horizon. The smell, salt and decay, and something animal and ancient. The sound of his own breathing, compressed, echoing back at him. He was alive. Why was he alive? Time stopped meaning anything in complete darkness. 3 days, 3 nights. He couldn't run here. There was nowhere to go, no ticket to board. Just Jonah and the weight of everything he'd refused. And here's what we need to understand about this moment. This wasn't just despair. This was recognition. The thing that breaks a man completely isn't suffering. It's seeing yourself clearly.
From the belly of the fish, Jonah prayed, and the prayer in that fish, preserved in ancient Hebrew verse, is one of the most extraordinary pieces of text ever written. He said, "I called to the Lord out of my distress, and he answered me. Out of the belly of Sheol I cried, and you heard my voice." Sheol, the ancient word for the place of the dead. He was already there. The waters closed in over me, weeds wrapped around my head. I went down to the roots of the mountains. The bars of the earth closed over me forever. And then, in the darkest sentence of the prayer, he said something that cost him everything to admit. Those who cling to false things forfeit the grace that could be theirs. He wasn't talking about the sailors. He wasn't talking about Nineveh. He was talking about himself. And on the 3rd day, the fish vomited Jonah onto dry land. Take a moment with this image. 3 days in a fish,
Then shore, sun, wind, the smell of dry ground. The contrast alone should feel like resurrection. And then the voice came again. Not thunder, not fire, just, "Get up, go to Nineveh, proclaim to it the message I tell you." The same command, unchanged, and this time Jonah went. Nineveh, he walked into it, one man, one Hebrew, one prophet covered in the evidence of where he'd just been, walking into the capital of the most feared empire on earth. 3 days to walk across it, the text says. After just 1 day, in the middle of the city, Jonah stopped and spoke. 40 days more, and Nineveh shall be overthrown. 8 words in Hebrew. That was it. No altar call, no persuasion, no argument, just the sentence. 8 words, 40 days. And then something impossible happened. Nineveh believed. Not some of them, all of them. Word reached the king. He rose from his throne, took off his robe, put on sackcloth, sat in the ash, and issued a decree. By the decree of the king and his nobles, no man or beast, no herd or flock shall taste anything. They shall not eat, they shall not drink, but all shall be covered with sackcloth and cry mightily to God. All shall turn from violence and from evil. Who knows? God may turn and relent. Who knows? The most powerful man in the known world, sitting in ashes, using the words, "Who knows?" And God saw, and God relented. The city was not destroyed. This is where the story should have ended. Jonah watched all of this, and he was furious. Furious. He prayed, if you can call it that, in anger. "Lord, is this not what I said when I was in my own country? This is why I fled to Tarshish at the beginning. I knew that you are a gracious God, merciful, slow to anger, abounding in steadfast love, and ready to relent from punishing. Therefore, Lord, please take my life from me. It is better for me to die than to live." Read that carefully. He ran from God because he knew God would be merciful. He wasn't afraid of failure. He was afraid of success. He didn't want Nineveh saved, and now they were saved, and he wanted to die. "Is it right for you to be angry?" God asked. Jonah didn't answer. He went and sat east of the city, made himself a shelter, and waited, half hoping God would change his mind. Jonah, the man who ran from mercy, still hoping for destruction. God caused a plant to grow up overnight, and Jonah, the man seething with righteous anger, was genuinely glad about the plant. More than glad, happy. The same man who told God he'd rather die found joy in shade. The next morning, God sent a worm, just one, and it ate through the plant, and the plant withered, and the shade was gone. A scorching east wind came, the sun beat down, and Jonah wilted, and said again, "It is better for me to die than to live." Over a plant. He was more upset about shade than a city. A plant that existed for 1 day, a plant he didn't grow, a plant he didn't water, a plant he had no claim to, and its loss undid him completely. You cared about this plant, which you did not labor over, which you did not grow, which came in a night and perished in a night. And should I not care about Nineveh, that great city in which there are more than 120,000 people who do not know their right hand from their left, and also much cattle?
The book ends there. No resolution, no answer from Jonah, no verdict, just the question, left open, unanswered, as if God is waiting, not just for Jonah, but for everyone listening. Think about what this story actually is. It is not a story about a fish.
It's a story about a man who knew the right thing and chose the opposite direction. About a man who survived the consequences of that choice, only to emerge still angry, still resistant, still convinced he was right. It's a story about mercy extended to people you believe don't deserve it, and the unbearable feeling that comes with watching that mercy work. Jonah wasn't a villain. He was honest. He felt what most people feel and are too afraid to admit. Some people don't deserve a second chance, and the terrifying suggestion of this story is maybe none of us get to decide that. Would you have gone or run? Not because it was safe, but because someone you believe is your enemy might still be worth saving? Is running from a calling ever really an option, or does the storm always find you? And the question God asked Jonah, sitting in the sun, grieving a plant, he never stopped asking it. Should I not care?